beans by hand and cut his own standing timber into fences as best he could. "We had running water," he chuckled, "the kind you had to run to fetch with a bucket." He was 73 now, but still grittily handsome, and you only had to take a look at his open face to see a man who would do right by his family and his neighbours. Then, in the spring of 1960, a young Boston Irish senator came through Melrose, which was nowhere in particular, but which pointed north toward Des Moines. The senator stopped long enough at a coffee shop for Jack to get a good look and take in the glamorously tousled hair, the winning freckles, the stream of wisecracks, and the merry mugging for the cameras. Surrounding Kennedy were fast talkers in snap-brim hats, pulling anxiously on cigarettes while they shook the papers open or pushed coins into payphones. The candidate had put in a lot of Iowa miles already, but in Melrose he poured on the happy-go-lucky like it was maple syrup on a short stack, and Jack Judge just spooned it up, signing on right there and then for the campaign. Though the senator's staccato short A's made it seem sometimes like he wasn't speaking English at all, leastways not the kind Jack was used to, there was no mistaking his smarts nor his appetite for action and power, which, in the normal way of things, would have raised Jack's eyebrows, but for some reason this time didn't. The judges had all been Democrats as long as anyone could recall, raised and schooled in old-fashioned Midwest populism, the kind of country preacher-man politics that was unafraid to blame metropolitan money for small-town hardships. Nor, since it was the country's breadbasket, were they bashful about expecting the government to tide them over the rough patches with a few favours, low-rate loans, decent prices for their corn and livestock, secure markets. They were all right with the assumption that the nominee was bound to come from a quite different world, just so long as he made some effort to understand theirs. The raw-knuckle mornings before dawn, the sinking misery of drought as sparse leaves on the cornstalks drooped and withered to papery rags, the heaviness of knowing they'd have to have a meeting with the bank manager before fall. For all his long cigarette holders and silky elegance, FDR had looked out for them. That much had been obvious from the AAA, Agricultural Adjustment Administration, and Harry Truman from Missouri was close to being one of them. They had wanted to feel good about Alder Stevenson, him being from Illinois, but Alder had revealed in his Princeton egg-headedness in such a superior way that he'd proved a tough sell, especially against the war hero Ike. The thing about Kennedy, who was no less urbane than Stevenson, was his trick of making the cleverness seem down-home smart, the cocky high school kid who could debate on Thursday and quarterback on Friday. So no one took against his can-do cheeriness, especially not when he sat down and listened to their stories of tough times and when he promised to do what he could to help them hang on to their family farms. Sure, all politicians talked that way when they were rustling up votes, but this one seemed in earnest, and he smelled, a little, of money himself, to which no one had much objection. So Jack Judge went to work as a Kennedy campaigner and drove his battered pickup round the pothole-happy backroads to Moravia and Promise City, to Mystic and Plano, stumping for the Catholic Bostonian who was still reckoned a dark horse against Vice President Nixon. Jack listened to a whole lot of righteous belly-aching about how no one could afford a tractor now that they cost so much, and how you couldn't make a go of it with less than 1,000 acres, so that it was just a matter of time before they'd have to say yes to one of the big agribusinesses hungry for land. And Jack understood that people who were too proud to come right out and ask for help from the government were in bad enough shape that they wanted to hear it was on offer anyway. So he gave them a little something to hang on to, the hope that there might be someone in Washington who would pay some heed. And Jack Judge was so good at listening and knowing what to say in a neighbourly way that people started to trust him, and as the years went on, they would come up to him in seed stores and wonder out loud why in the world he wouldn't run for something himself. After years of self-effacing hemming and hawing, Jack eventually came round to their point of view and ran for office in the small way that makes democracy real, spending $65 on vote judge signs and getting elected to chair the city council. How was that, Jack?
Oh, I liked it well enough, but you know, everyone takes everything so personal. If some old boy had a problem with a traffic light or a neighbor's dog, he'd call me up drunk or even come around and hammer on my door.